Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Quantum Action Podcast, the podcast that's here to take you to infinity and beyond. And today with me, we have Jonathan Spindler, who's going to share his success story with us. And we're going to learn some interesting things along the way. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Fabrizio. Happy to join you guys.
Yeah. So, Jonathan, you have an interesting story. I mean, you're an entrepreneur now, and you're doing moving in lots of different areas with franchises and things like that. But tell us how you got there. Tell us about, where you grew up, you graduate high school, and then you start your career as a sailor. Start us off with that. Over to you, Jonathan.
Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely had a colorful career path, I would say. I was always interested in a lot of things and always had to stay busy. So even ever since I was a kid, I grew up between Houston and a place called Telluride, Colorado. And I was just always an entrepreneur when I was younger. So I always went to find work, whether it was shoveling driveways or selling newspapers. At Telluride, we set up a lemonade stand, my brothers and I, right on Main Street. And I was always working, always knew I wanted to be busy. And that didn't stop. So, in college, it was the same thing. I was in an ROTC program as part of getting, my captain's license to drive ships, which was major marine transportation. And from a young age, once again, I knew I wanted to be a ship captain and potentially be the CEO of a shipping company. That was I always knew I wanted to be a CEO of something. I guess I had it wrong just a little bit. It wasn't a shipping company. Yeah. But I just loved working with people, managing people, and always having challenges. And so
what type of ships were you captaining? What type of marine sort of vessels were you into?
Yep. So I was my goal was to get my captain's license. So we call it a master's unlimited ticket in the U.S. or any gross ton, which is internationally recognized. The goal was to find a way to get that license as fast as possible. So a lot of people get it in their maybe low 30s, mid 40s, and then they still have to wait for the ability to sail captain. Yeah, I sailed nonstop, took very little time off, and was able to get it by 26 and started sailing captain at 27. So there's ranks. You got to go from third officer to second officer to chief officer or first officer and then captain. Mm-hmm. And so in order to do that, I took any job that came at me, no matter if it was a U.S. flagship or a foreign flagship. So I worked for Department of Defense. I worked on what we call heavy lift ships, very specialized cranes. I worked on a car carrier, oil tankers, a cruise ship. I worked for Princess Cruise Lines, which was an absolutely amazing experience, and ended up in the oil and gas space, running and being the master, what we call master, or captain of a drill ship out in the Gulf of Mexico.
Okay, and then from there you went into work for family office. So how did that happen? Because that's an interesting shift. It's completely different.
Yep. So I'd worked really hard. Obviously, I had kids along the way. And so there was something calling me to come back home. Obviously, the family wanted me to be home, more often. And so I started knowing that I was kind of at my limit. I wanted to be captain, but I was ready for the next challenge. I'd been captain for a handful of years at that point. Yeah. And so for me, it was, what's my next challenge? Because I need to be stimulated with something new. So I started looking at the company I was working for was going to pull me in the office, and I just didn't feel like that was the right move for me. So I had an opportunity to join a family office in an operations role. So they need somebody to really manage teams, manage personnel. And that's kind of
so let's just try. So how did you meet the people that hired you in the family office? How did that happen? Because the networking side of things is interesting to hear as well.
Yep, absolutely. So it was actually a family friend, how we got introduced to them. And it's all about your network. So, when I was going through the ranks, it was always, do I want to get an MBA? Is that important for me from a salary perspective? I think I was, a lot of people do MBAs for two things, for networking and also to help increase their salary. From the salary perspective, I think I was over that line, but from a networking perspective, it was always up for debate, and even is today, whether you do that. In this case, it's the right place, right time, a lot of hard work, went for an interview, and sure enough, it seemed, it was a good fit.
Yeah. So what were you do? What was your role in the family office? What kind of stuff were you dealing with in the family office?
So I started off as VP of operations. The family owned a huge portfolio of commercial real estate. So commercial office, commercial medical, hotels and resorts.
Okay, so it got you into looking into real estate, and that market. Okay.
Correct. So the benefit for that, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing without that experience today. So I understood the people management. I was running teams. On the cruise ship, it's 1,200 crew, 900 to 1,200 crew.
Yeah.
Obviously, not all of them are under me at the time. But when I got to the drill rig, when I ended up being captain on, I had 200 people that I was responsible for, and so it's really learning the people management side. Which I think is the most difficult for a lot of people to understand, that it's, how you connect with people and what you do, and also your networking. So from there, the family office, I brought those skills to the table and were able to run operations. And in return, I learned a lot about the transaction. So understanding financing, understanding better P&L management, understanding real estate deals and real estate transactions, because that's a whole specialty group in itself. And so I really was able to expand my knowledge base and push myself. And I tell you that the 3 years I was there was probably some of the longest hours I ever worked, but it was well worth it.
Yeah. So it was better than an MBA then, because you were real hands-on stuff.
Yeah, I think an MBA is still great, which is why I think about it. But it was absolutely fantastic. I never discourage anybody from getting an MBA. From the networking side, everybody has different situations, but it was fantastic. It was definitely a crash course for me. I was able to absorb it a lot.
Yeah. So then from the family office, you got into the franchising. So tell us about how that happened.
Yep. So we were going through an interesting time. We had Hurricane Harvey, took out a number of our properties at the family office, as well as my house. So our house got hit by a tornado from Hurricane Harvey. And so it was just a interesting time. And I just knew after working, getting everything back online, all of Houston was flooded, where the headquarters of this family office was. And our buildings had received a decent amount of damage. And so I focused on work, got that taken care of. And then it was time to focus on family a bit. It took about a month to get the work stuff back up and going, to get the buildings operational after the storm. And at that point I said, hey, you know what, I think I'm ready to have a transition. I've learned enough that I can, turn this into something that I can do for my family.
Yeah.
And so
what made you decide to do the franchise, and how did you pick the first franchise?
So I'd been introduced to franchising through the family office, through the hotels. So big hotel chains are franchises. And so I had some exposure to that. And then it was really the boss, who I say that, my wife, who was pushing me to enter some kind of space with kids, some type of franchising space with kids. And so I started doing some research and found some of the franchises that we own today.
Oh, okay. So can you tell us a bit about your first franchise? What were the obstacles? Because obviously it's not a business that you invented. You became a franchise of a particular brand. And tell us a bit about that and the challenges and how you started to grow that.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of challenges being a young entrepreneur, and there's different paths to take, right? Some people want to found the franchise. Some people want to be a franchisee, which is what I am. Mm-hmm. I felt like I had a decent management skill and management set and financial wherewithal, and didn't know enough about the franchising space yet to become a franchisor. To be the people that created the franchise. So I went the franchisee route, which is something I felt I had, the ability to do. And I still had a lot to learn, which is important, right? You always need to make sure that, you're constantly learning, and you're learning every day. And so I started looking at franchises that would help guide me through the process, B, met my financial targets, and also C, met my core goals. So did they align with my values? Can I be proud of this? Will my kids be proud of it? Et cetera. And so I kind of went through the list of franchises and shortlisted a couple, and one really stood out. It's a family entertainment franchise. And so that's what we chose. And we've been extremely successful doing that as our first franchise now out of three brands.
So you opened one of these, and was that local? Was that near where you live? No, it was somewhere else.
It was out of state. Yep. So this brand had already been established in the state where I live. And so we were like, what's another major city? So we picked another city that was a major city that we could essentially own the rights to a number of locations in that city.
So you opened more than one then. So you started with one, it worked well, and you opened a second and a third, and that's how it went.
Correct.
Yeah. What challenges were there in operating a business where the rules are dictated by somebody else? How did you find that?
So there's a lot of pros and cons. The pros are you have this system that's set up for you. It's not perfect, and so that's one of the cons. You have to be able to mold yourself and know that you're not in charge of that. You're not coming up with those ideas, whether you like them or not. You can always voice how you feel, but it helps you accelerate your growth. That process, some franchises were founded 30 years ago, some 5 years ago, but that process has been proven and vetted by a number of franchisees. And there's a reason those things are the way they are, which is why I like the franchise model. It allows you to set up, incredibly successful business if you pick the right one and you have the grit to push through, which is very important, to persevere. But there are pros and cons to the system for sure.
So did you buy the real estate to put the franchise in, or did you rent it? And how did that side work?
So for me, location is key.
Yeah.
So it depends on the business. We have 3 different brands now. One has to do with children's swimming. One has to do teaching children to swim. One has to do with a coffee business, and the other one's the kid-centric business. Okay. And so for me, it's all location driven. So if the best location I need to lease, I'm going to lease it. If I can buy it, then it definitely makes sense to buy it.
Okay. And then you just
numbers make sense.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So for instance, the coffee business, most of the locations we're opening are purchased. We purchase the land. Whereas the children centric businesses, we want to be in major shopping centers. And that's tougher, right? They're already owned by a big REIT or by a big landlord that just won't sell.
Yeah. So how did you manage your business during the whole COVID lockdowns? Because obviously the coffee shop must have been hit and the other two. I mean, did any of these, were they running during COVID lockdowns or not? Or depending on location? Tell me how you managed to ride that storm.
Yep. So the only one I had open at the time were the adventure parks, the kid-centric businesses. I can say it was definitely scary going into it, right? My family and I were on the last cruise from Royal Caribbean. We get home and everybody had already taken all the toilet paper and everything. And I'm not so worried about toilet paper. I'm worried about business and income and how am I going to make debt payments and everything else. So it was definitely a challenge, but believe it or not, the states we operate in were extremely COVID friendly, from a business perspective. Other than getting your head around how do you operate safe, how do we do this? Our team got together and said, how can we make the safest environment, with what we have? So we were shut down for 3 months, 3.5, by choice, not so much by government. Also peer pressure, probably not. We shut down before that, but had we opened, there probably people would have been, it just wasn't the right thing to do. So we took that financial hit. But in that time, we were able to really dive into, we already have certain sanitation products we're using. We're going to, up the schedules, all those things to make families feel safe. And so from a financial perspective, 2020 was, it was interesting. We still did okay. We came out ahead. But 2021, January 1st, it was like the light switch went off. Our business came back stronger than 2019. Which was amazing to see. Even though COVID was kind of still around, people were ready to get back out.
Yeah. So the coffee shop, for example, coffee shops were shut during COVID. What made you invest in the coffee shop franchise? Because that's an interesting one.
So once again, I go back to my cores. Do I hit a financial target that I want to hit? Okay. Do I like the brand? Do I align with their core values? Does it work for my family? Is it something we can be proud of? And so the coffee business just checked that off. I think
so you were a customer. You were a customer, basically.
Absolutely, yes. I found the specific in the process of financing another location, and the bank had pulled out at the night. We were just about to close. So we were closing the deal in a few days, and we were 2 or 3 months into COVID. The bank pulled out of one of my adventure park deals. And so I started calling a whole bunch of banks. You never give up, right? Don't let anything stop you, which is, the key to success. I started calling a bunch of banks, and multiple banks told me about this brand. I said, who are you financing? If lenders pretty much shut down during COVID, waiting to see what was happening. And multiple brands told me this this coffee shop, this coffee franchise.
Yeah.
So then I had a friend of mine call me and said, "Hey, I'm going to work for this said coffee franchise." And so all the dots connected. I said, "Let me learn about this." And sure enough, it, it met all the targets for me. It hit my financial goals. It hit, my core values, and it's a great business model. And I believe in the leadership team. And the product is absolutely great.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. So now we're going into people that be watching, maybe we're already in 2023. Lots of talk about, inflation, price of oil gone up, the fill your car up, it's more expensive these days. Some people are saying the economy is going to crash, or it has already crashed. How do you see things going into 2023 and then 2024, where there'll be another election in the US? Of course, we've got this war between Ukraine and Russia. So all these, external factors that are happening. What's your view on how do you think this is going to affect your business, and what advice would you give to anybody that's watching this, that's a bit worried about, what's going to happen in the next couple of years?
Yeah. So there's a decent amount of risk, but everybody has a different, I'd say a different tolerance, but also, it depends where you are in your stages and what you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. So for me as a business, I'll talk about two ways. One, what I'm doing and maybe, others should do. I'm ramping up. So during this stage, I'm using this time to build up the businesses. I'm using the last couple of months, construction items have come down, still not back to where they were, but real estate deals are really hot. I'm able to close some real estate deals that are cheaper. And I think that will get better into 2023.
Yeah. So you're saying that real estate is going to go down in price. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So
for the retail markets that I'm going in.
Yeah.
I think it's industry specific and market specific, but the markets that I'm looking at, we're already starting to see landlords that were holding tight calling us back saying, "Hey, maybe we do want that offer you gave us." Well, now that offer's changed. For me. And so from a real estate perspective and a business perspective, I'm not letting that stop me from growth. And I believe in 2024, and even after the election, things will pick up. It may take the election to make that happen. I was at lunch the other day and a guy said, I said, "Are we in the recession? Are we not in the recession?" He's like, "We're not fully in the recession until tons of people are losing their jobs," which is extremely unfortunate, but that's what helps correct the cycle.
Yeah.
And so I found that interesting. And when I weigh that in my head, are we going to have a lot of people losing their jobs? There's so many open positions, right? Even at my businesses, we never struggled to get employees, and now we are. It's a fun place to work. People like it. It just was never an issue. And now it is. It's not as challenging as say restaurants, but are people really are we going to have mass layoffs? And if we do, or is it going to be easier for them to find or transition to another job because there are so many employers looking to hire people? So, I don't know exactly what from a global economy or even a macro in the US economy, what that means for us. But I think it's going to be a little bit smoother from a financial perspective. I think it's going to be a rough correction in 2023,
Yeah. Because it's going to hit people. And then, so do you think, because obviously going and getting a coffee, maybe something people will start to, cut. Do you think that will affect your coffee business and your parks for the kids and that? Maybe people are going to cut on that, or as you said, depending on location, because I think
it
has its own economy. Yeah.
So there's no doubt that we'll see an effect, right? I think I'd be ignorant to say that our business wouldn't take a hit during a recession, because it is discretionary spending. People can make coffee at home, kids can be entertained in the cul-de-sac by their house. It's not toilet paper or tissues that that we need. So am I ready for that? I like to believe we are ready for that, and I'm okay with that to expand, based on the goals we've set out. But could there be an effect? Is it 5%? Is it 20%? Is it 50%? I don't have that crystal ball. What I would like to say though, for everybody with, the stock market and everything else, right? It's definitely a big worry for me. I'm not a huge fan of the market. I think it's extremely important to the economy. But I feel like taking my money and putting it into my businesses, I can make rapid growth, and I don't see that same growth in the market. So we do have money in the market, but it's a lot less than what's in the business, and a lot of it's cash or treasury right now.
Yeah, well, because you control your business. I mean, at the end of the day, if you put your money in Amazon or Apple shares, whatever, you don't control the CEO or whatever they're going to do or what new product they're going to launch. If you have your own business, you can control who to hire, who to fire, which place to open, which not to open. But it sounds like to me that you're going to be getting some really good real estate deals in 2023, 2024, because the price is going to come down, and that will probably offset the fact that there aren't so many people coming in to buy a coffee. And then once the economy picks up again, you've got this lower cost base because you went in and got you bought your piece of land, you built your coffee shop for less money because you took advantage of the flex in the economy. And now when the economy picks up again and people start coming in for coffee, you're doing better than the guy next door because you got in at the right time. Is that kind of the gist?
Correct. Yep. That's definitely the game plan. Will they wash each other out? I don't know. There's always techniques and things. So, hopefully, if we do lose a client base, we can figure out ways to go tap another client or go, it's all about marketing and drive. And so we engage in our local communities that we're in, and that's a big part of our success, why we do a little bit better than some of our peers in the same franchise. And so for people that are striving to be entrepreneurs, that's what it's about, right? It's engaging in your local community. It's, are you doing the right thing all the time? Are you pushing the limits on, both networking, on deals, whatever it may be, are you pushing to that next level to get there? And it's always perseverance.
Yeah. So talking about engaging with the community, how important has and is and will be social media for your businesses?
Extremely important. So, it can be good or bad, right? Sometimes people post something that we may not love, but that was their perception. And that can cause issues. But, we like to focus on what we're doing good and why we're there. And we do it because we love it, whether it's, scholarships for our employees or supporting the local charities. And we don't just say that we're engaged in the community. We're constantly doing it. We're constantly working with the same partners. And that's the key to success, right? It's if people understand it's more than just a business. There's some people behind it, that gets out in the community.
Yeah. So do you have social media managers for each business? How do you manage that? And what platforms have you seen work best for your businesses? And of course, they're slightly different, the 3 different franchises that you have. So tell us a bit about how you go about that with the social media and the different platforms you're using for the different types of thing.
Absolutely. So, I control that pretty closely. So each business unit has a director, and those directors are kind of in charge of the social media, assets that go out. And we do multiple things a week for those, and that's extremely important. And I monitor those because, it's just so important to make sure you're getting your presence out there with organic photos, right? That's the biggest thing, is making sure you have organic photos, not staged and models, because people just don't respond as well. You want real, natural photos, having a good time or enjoying your product. And we've had a lot of
people like do you interview people coming in and out of the coffee shop, like on a phone, say, hi, how did you enjoy the experience? Do you do any of that kind of thing?
So we have at the adventure park. We have not, I haven't, the brand has, but I haven't done that from a coffee shop perspective. But when we are engaging in the community, we do take tons of photos, and those are important. And then also, for instance, the other day we brought coffee to some teachers at the school just before the holiday, and we didn't even say anything about them posting it on social media, but sure enough, they thanked us on social media, right?
Yeah, that's the best. That's the best form of marketing, when you've got people that are just naturally sharing your product. That just says a lot more than going out from your own Instagram account kind of thing.
Absolutely. So Facebook for us, right? Each market's slightly different, but for us, Facebook is kind of the mom generation that we're targeting right now. All my businesses are almost mom centric. Facebook is super important. They have made some challenges. So last year they changed how you can target. So for instance, we used to do, dedicated, and still do, dedicated days for first responders. And we used to be able to target them on Facebook specifically. Hey, first responders, we're doing a free event for you, come out. And now that's called, you're segregating. So it gets a little bit more difficult. You're not allowed to call, you're not allowed to market towards that demographic, so to say.
Yeah.
And so there's some challenges there. So Facebook was our number one, followed by Instagram. So the moms are also transitioning, and our clients, not just moms, but are transitioning to Instagram. So, some locations are having great success with TikTok. That's not something I've pushed very hard, but definitely Facebook and Instagram are extremely important to our business.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess when it's mom centric, it's women around what, 35, 45.
Yeah, I go 22 to, low 50s.
22 to
22, 23 to low 50s when we're kind of targeting.
Yeah. That's and obviously understanding which platform they're on the most is key in doing that. That's interesting. Now, any young person that's watching this and thinking of setting up their own business, becoming an entrepreneur, what advice would you give them? Because there's obviously, and you've probably met some mentors along the way, and I'd like you to touch on those people that have influenced you, and then maybe we'll go into any books or podcasts that you listen to that have helped you or are helping you right now. So let's go in that direction. So over to you, Jonathan.
So mentors. I've had a lot of mentors along the way. Some good, some bad. Whether you call them mentors or bosses. And you learn from those experiences, right? Whether it's good or bad, you say, hey, I don't want to be like that person, but I really respect this person. And it's all about finding a mentor is all about you and your networking and asking, right? So if you're a young entrepreneur and you find somebody that you really, like or would like to reach out to, ask that question. Hey, this is what I'd like to do. This is my plan. Do you mind giving me some advice? I respect your opinion. And that's the biggest thing I find from young people that I mentor is they're nervous to ask other people to mentor them.
Don't be afraid to do that then.
Correct. I love mentoring, especially a lot of the kids I went to college with, my classmates, because they're still ship captains and they want to be home with their families. So I've been able to, some had the will to do it on their own and say, hey, now I need some help. I'm kind of in some mess, from a business ownership perspective. And others have said, hey, can you help me make this transition? And there's just nothing more rewarding than seeing them become successful and become self-sufficient, from doing that. So both important for people that are watching this that do have businesses to mentor the entrepreneurs and younger people also. So
what do you do, Jonathan, to learn new stuff? Do you read books? Do you listen to audio books, podcasts? What do you do to keep the learning going?
So I would say my time's extremely limited now. Especially before when I was offshore, and when I was especially the heavy lift ship or the car carrier, we'd be crossing the Atlantic Pacific, going from or Singapore to the Gulf of Mexico. I had tons of time I did a lot of books on tape. So I could still be working and being on the bridge, driving the ship. And so tons of books on tape, that really helped shape the focus. And now it's a book every now and then. I read a book called Grit the other day. I've mentioned that term a number of times. It's a good read. It can be summarized pretty quickly, but it's a good read just to put things in different perspective. Probably the most influential book on me from a business perspective, I read it, I don't know, maybe in 2005, 6, 7, was Jack Welch's Winning. I really respect Jack Welch. Absolutely phenomenal book. Just on what he did with GE's culture and the people and the caliber of people he was able to attract. So just a very influential book. And now I'm getting into EOS, the Entrepreneur's Operating System, which has been recommended to me. And I'm just at the starting point of that book. And the system, it's a whole system. So you need to get an implementer and start rolling it out to the team to really excel to the next level.
Because that's important. So those are kind of the books that while you were sailing, you were listening to, and that kind of got you thinking in a certain way, which then probably you managed to attract that family office opportunity to you, because probably that stuff that you were listening to kind of shifted you onto a certain frequency, if we want to talk about the quantum field and all that kind of stuff. So you probably moved into that way of thinking, which sort of attracted that opportunity, and then you were ready for it. You think?
Yeah, I mean, you know, listening to your last podcast, it's, you know, the gentleman asked, you know, did you ever have that experience between changing careers and something else happened? And that was definitely one of those moments. You know, I knew I wanted to excel and go for the next challenge, and everything just kind of lined up.
I mean, I had a similar experience. I was flying for an airline out in the Middle East, 737s, and we're doing a lot of night flying, and you got to stay awake. And when you're flying across the Indian Ocean, you know, you do a radio call every half an hour, and most of the time they don't hear you on HF. So you're sitting there and you're trying to stay awake. You're trying to keep the other guy awake, or maybe the other guy says, "I'm going to have a 10-minute nap. Watch me." So you got to watch, and you're sitting there and you got to stay awake. So you'd read. That's what I did. And I remember reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, written by Robert Kiyosaki, and he's talking about these 4 quadrants. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I'm earning good money here, but I'm in this, you know, employee quadrant. How do I move and shift into business mode? What do I need to do? And it certainly got me thinking that, you know, just flying a plane, I had more in me than just flying a plane. And so what could I do? Because obviously, you know, my wife was at home, with the kids were small at the time. We had a big house. But you know, it did get a bit scary in the middle of the night. You know, I'm flying to India and back, and she's sitting in Oman, where we were at the time. You know, what can I do to sort of improve things? And so reading helped me to shift, and so that's certainly something. And today, of course, people are big into audiobooks, and the podcasts, which is the new thing now. Which you can
Isn't that? I mean, that's just such a great book. You when you're done reading it, you feel like you can conquer the world. I mean, he's a really good, you know, really good author. You know, and just a really motivating book to kind of, you know, are you in the rat race? You know, what's your thinking? What's, you know, and one thing I have learned is, because, you know, I've got a friend I went to high school with, very close with now. And he's in the rat race. He does extremely well, but he's in the rat race a bit. And I keep trying to pull him out. Like, hey, come and try some of this. You know, come get a franchise.
Have you played the game? Have you? Because that's what I did. I set up.
I have on my iPad.
I set up a group
years ago.
I was living in Muscat. I set up the cash flow quadrant game group, and we would meet once a month, like 7 or 8 of us, and we'd play the game for a few hours. And it's interesting how much you learn by playing that game.
Yes. Yeah. So I'd play it on the bridge, you know, of the ship when we had time, you know, with the iPad or with other people. But you know, it's amazing what I found out is not everybody's destined to be an entrepreneur. Maybe they don't want to be.
That is true. That is very true.
This person I keep trying to pull out, saying, hey, you know, I see that you're stressed sometimes, or that, you know, he's a sales guy, and, you know, are you hitting your goals? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. You know, let me show you a whole different way of living, and the stress is different. There's still a lot of stress. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't, but you're controlling your destiny. He's like, that's just not for me. As many times as I try to pull that out. Right. And so everybody's got a different risk tolerance and what they're comfortable with. And so for a lot of people, the market's really great. Some people, real estate investing and having that asset is really good. Right. And anyway, Rich Dad Poor Dad is just a great book for people that are ready to get motivated and kind of teetering on what to do.
Well, I mean, Grant Cardone was telling me that the guy that works for him, Jared, who's the guy in charge of all their sales courses and that part of the business, he said he could never do this on his own. He said he could never do this on his own, but he's come to work for me. He's under my umbrella. He's making 3 or 4 million a year.
Yeah,
he wouldn't be able to do on his own. So if you're not the entrepreneur type, go and work for an entrepreneur, become their like right-hand man kind of thing, and you know, and you will ride that wave. And you'll make more money as a consequence of that association.
Yes, absolutely. I think if I have it, was Jared his pilot at one point?
No, that's Ryan. Ryan.
Okay.
It's the same with Ryan. It's the same with Ryan. I mean, Ryan joined. Well, he was piloting in Utah, and then he left to join Grant's team as a sales guy. And then they got talking about an aeroplane. And so they bought the first jet, because I remember speaking to Grant the day after he bought his first jet. It's the first time I spoke to Grant. I was hoping to sell him a jet, but, you know, I spoke to him the day after he bought his first jet. But, you know, but Ryan then became the pilot, but he continued working in the real estate with Grant. And now he doesn't fly anymore. He just flies a little bit just to keep his hand in. But he's in charge of the whole real estate business. But again, he's making a ton of money he wouldn't be making on his own, because he went to work for Grant, and he's grown with Grant. And then, as Grant says, his best investment besides investing in himself, is his airplane. And he wrote this as a thing for my new book that's coming out, The Quantum Economy. He said, you know, I tell his story in the book, and he has endorsed the book, and said, guys, you need to buy a jet because that will help you build your business big time, buying a plane.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I saw that at the family office, you know, at least towards the beginning, but you know, and see it with, you know, a whole bunch of people. A plane is definitely a time machine in a lot of ways. And if you have a business that's, you know, across multiple states or multiple countries,
yeah,
you know, and the business is generating enough revenue, there's just nothing better in my eyes, you know, that allows you to keep that expansion going.
Yeah. But I know that recently you started a new hobby. So
I
tell
did.
us what got you into learning to fly. Tell us a bit about that, and how does that help you with your mindset and your whole life in general? I mean, tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I told you I didn't have that much time anymore.
Yeah, yeah,
and I also didn't have a lot of stress relievers. So, you know, I was ready for the next stimulus for my mind, you know, somehow to keep me challenged and keep me going. And it was something I always wanted to do. So I said, hey, let me try this. So, you know, I went for my first lesson and just got completely addicted. And so that was, you know, that was it, you know, and since I've logged about 100 hours, just shy of 100 hours, and just can't stop. And the one thing I find is that, you know, when I'm in the air, small plane, general aviation, there's no internet. It's just you and the plane, and it's peaceful. So that's actually my time, you know, that I can process, I guess. So when I was working on ships, I'd have a lot of free time for my mind to kind of to think and be in that state of kind of helping me with my next ideas. And when I get in the grind every day and I'm in business and taking meetings and phone calls, it's tough to do that. So being in the air allows me to focus on the plane and then also kind of be at a different state of mind, which it's just absolutely fantastic.
It's interesting you said it, because you're the second person that said exactly that to me in the last few weeks. They took up flying as a stress reliever, and to help them, because they wanted a challenge, but at the same time they needed something to take the stress away from business, everyday business. And so they took up flying.
Yep. Yeah, it's amazing. It was a little bit of a challenge convincing the wife. Obviously there's some risk involved there. And, you know, for me, what's interesting is, you know, whether it's driving cars or whatever, I like to push the limits. In business, she's like, you're going to push the limits. You're the push the limits. But what I realized at sea is you have to respect Mother Nature.
Yes.
Right. And a plane is, you know, even one step above, right? At least to sea, you're floating most of the time, unless something really bad happens. And the plane, it's a little bit different. You've got an extra dimension involved. And so, you know, my respect for Mother Nature and for, you know, gravity is very different. And I'm extremely cautious, which is very different than other aspects of my life.
Yeah. Now, tell me a bit about how family has helped you, because there's some people, they think, oh no, I want to do this money thing, this entrepreneur thing. I haven't got time to have a family. And we've seen this guy that's conquered the internet recently called Andrew Tate, who's kind of rocking the world with his interviews and his take on a few things in life. And obviously he's not a family man. But a lot of what Andrew Tate says, I tend to agree with a lot of what he says, not everything, but he's not a family man. But you're a family man. And tell me how, share with those that are watching, listening, how family and being married in that has helped ground you and helped you in your business as well. Because I think this is an important message for people to hear.
Absolutely. So, I mean, that's why we do what we do, right? I don't do it for myself. I do it for, you know, my kids' future, or, you know, at least showing my kids an extremely hard work ethic. They know that I'm working hard and they can come to the businesses and enjoy and see the labor, but it's also an opportunity for them to work with me. You know, I've got a teenager, and so to watch him expand, he's very different at home than he is at work. And so to watch him expand, you know, his knowledge and him come to say, hey, you know, these employees are doing this and this. Now I understand why you say these things. And, it's very rewarding to watch that. But it's also coming home at the end of the day of a hard work day and having my two younger kids give me big hugs and put them to bed is, you know, just puts a smile on your face. So for me, you know, I was very blessed to have my wife, who put up with me being a sailor. So that's not easy, especially my younger days. And so I travel a lot, you know, I'm on a plane 4 or 5 days a week. traveling to different destinations for our businesses. And so, one, having a spouse that supports you and that you support them as well in what they need is extremely important. But once again, family is why we do it. And I make sure that our businesses align, with our family values.
Yeah. And it also, it keeps you focused, which is important, because in the airline pilot world, for example, I saw many pilots, in fact, the divorce rate is about 80-85%. But it's because they don't focus. They of course they've got all these nice looking women sitting in the back as flight attendants, and they get distracted. When if they weren't distracted and they would just behave, as I call it, life would be a lot better. And some of these guys had 3 or 4 divorces behind them and sending money to this wife and this child and this, and their whole life outside the cockpit was a total mess. And I said to myself, when these guys retire, they're going to drop dead within a few years, because the whole thing is just going to come tumbling on them. And sometimes, as one colleague of mine whose wife was a psychologist, she said a lot of pilots hide their problems behind their uniform. And I thought, that's so true. That's so true. Yep. So I remember early in my career, I interviewed the former Lufthansa chief pilot, and he was telling me that for 3 years he spent in Arizona. He was the head of the Lufthansa pilot school. So all the young guys coming out of high school, they were sponsored by Lufthansa, sent out to Arizona for about a year, where they learned to fly and everything, and then they went back to Germany and started flying the line with Lufthansa. And he said he would sit down with each one of them one-to-one, and he would say, look, the best thing you can do for your career is to get married as soon as you can, make sure you marry your best friend, and stay faithful. That will be the best, because it will stabilize you psychologically, which will give you an edge for your career. And I remember him saying, and I'd been married 6 months when I met this guy, and I was writing for an aviation magazine at the time, and I happened to get to know this guy and interviewed him and wrote the article, and that stuck with me all the way up to today. And I've seen, when I look back, I see how I have benefited. And then on the sad side, how many of my colleagues went the other way, and their lives are a bit of a mess as a result of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we see that a lot in the shipping industry.
Yeah.
Right. So you're traveling the world, and same thing. The guys will get distracted in different parts of the world.
Yeah.
And so definitely understand that. And that is right. You need to be mentally strong. I can't say that being married is for everybody. It definitely is for me.
Yeah, of course.
I wouldn't be where I am without my wife and partner.
Yeah.
But for the aspiring entrepreneurs, it is very important to make sure you have a stable life, whether it's family, personally, with your friends. You don't want ups and downs and a hectic work environment. I can say that, being an entrepreneur and having so many businesses around the country, it's definitely not always easy on the family, right? So there are challenges, and it just, you have to be cognizant of staying focused and remember that, to make that family time and make sure you're, seeing your kids and hanging out with the family, and that time just means that much more for the time that you have. So.
Yeah, great. So before I let you go, Jonathan, what would be your advice then for people in 2023? What will be the main thing that people need to watch out for?
I think 2023 and 2024 are going to bring a lot of opportunities. And so, whether it's for you, as we call the rat race from the book, if you're stuck in the rat race and you are, aspiring to do something different, start thinking about that. Start getting a plan together. Are you saving enough money to do that?
Yeah.
Can you get money from friends and family to put together a business? Are you that entrepreneur? Are you that driven person? And whatever your life plan may be, start to action it, right? We're coming up on New Year's resolutions, and just takes that, somebody to help push you to the next level to get to where you want to be. And so he's going to have tons of opportunity for a lot of people.
Yeah. So let's look out for the opportunities then. That's what we need to be looking for. The glass is half full, not half empty. There are opportunities out there. Let's not buy into this doom and gloom that the media are trying to drum into our heads, that everything is a disaster or is going to be a disaster. There are opportunities out there. If we start looking for them, we will find them. And then we need to ask ourselves, well, how can I take advantage of what do I need to do? And ask yourself those questions. As Tony Robbins says, the quality of your life depends on the quality of the questions you ask yourself. And I'm a great believer in that. Jonathan, thank you very much for your time, for being on the show. And everybody, I invite you to subscribe to Quantum Action. We're here to take you to infinity and beyond. And I'll see you on the next one.